All right, what is going on, good people? We are back at it again. Little quick thoughts video on that Ravens victory against the Jacksonville Jaguars, the 23-7 victory on Sunday Night Football. And in a game that I feel like, let's just be honest. First things first, I'm your host, DJ. Hope you guys are doing well. But let's jump right into it because I want to be quick on this one. So I feel like the Jacksonville Jaguars, first things first, are a very talented and tough team to play. There's a couple of hard outs when it comes to potential playoff teams. Jacksonville is one of them. Buffalo, I think, is another that can be really dangerous going late down into the stretch. And of course, you got the obvious teams at the top of Miami and Kansas City, and of course Baltimore as well. But interestingly enough, right, the Ravens. It's funny. The one thing that I can think of that comes off the top of my head right at this moment about this game is I put in a tweet. I said the Ravens way: keep a team into the game just long enough so they can beat you, right? And this is how this game was feeling, right? Like sometimes I like to tweet my feelings as I get them, especially throughout the game, just because I'm gonna think differently now than I thought in that moment. But I said that because didn't this feel eerily similar, especially early on, uh, when the Ravens weren't scoring and when they weren't capitalizing on turnovers? It felt like, didn't this feel like one of those games where the Ravens are gonna let them just hang around, and then beat them at the end? It's weird because I keep going back to that, right? I keep going back to that feeling of maybe, and maybe it was just the feeling of what last year was. I keep going back to this feeling of the Ravens being able to dominate every team, but just not, right? Being able to put every team away probably in the first three quarters, but just not. And I think there's this kind of subconscious fear a little bit when it comes down to the Raven to watching the Ravens play this year, right? Because a lot of the issues that were documented from last year have also been issues of this year. There just haven't been as many losses in that way this year, right? The three losses that the Ravens have had, they've been leading not only in the fourth quarter, but leading at the 2-minute warning and still lost those games, right? Whether it be at the end, whether it be close to the end with no time left or whatever it may be. So I still feel like, I'm just going to be honest with y'all, I feel like I'm still watching the Ravens with that same level of, will they finish this game, as I did last year, right? And as I have in years past. And this game felt that way too. This game felt like it was like, what is going on? Right? When are they going to put them away? When are they going to put their foot on their neck and be done with it? Right? When are they going to just finish this game? And that's how I felt. I'm sitting here watching this game and I'm like, finish the game. But it's weird because I jumped into spaces after the game and everybody's worried about San Francisco and how San Francisco is gonna do their thing against the Ravens next week. But we all know, like, if you've been a Ravens fan long enough, especially the Ravens of the last 5 or 6 years, you know that this is the exact team the Ravens will play down to, right? Is Jacksonville. Jacksonville's not as good as Baltimore, not as good as some of the top teams in the AFC. They are a good team. They are a talented team, but they're not as good as some of these top teams that the Ravens will face. But the Ravens will go in next week and play the game of their lives next week against San Francisco. We all know how this goes. We all know where this points to. We all know how, we know that that's what's going to happen next week. But in this particular game, I just felt a little bit uneasy at times. And sometimes that's where my internal fear comes in with the Ravens right now. It's like the Ravens are a good team. They're capable of beating anyone you put against them. They're capable of beating them both on the defensive end and the offensive end, no matter what. But at the same time, for whatever reason, for some crazy reason, the Ravens will not put teams away. And I think that goes back to the same discussion we've had probably this season, probably last season, probably for past seasons, seasons in the past. Is this the Ravens way? Is this the John Harbaugh way? And should we be concerned going into the playoffs? That's a whole nother video for a whole nother time when we can get together. But it's crazy. Real quick, I do have a comment, not the generic streamer comment, but Eric L says, "Greetings, brother man. How far do you think the Ravens? How far do you think they will make it under Coach Harbaugh in the playoffs?" It's interesting because keying in on my point. I'll keep that up for a little bit while I talk about it. But that's my struggle, right? That's my struggle. My struggle is, can they make it far under John Harbaugh? Because John Harbaugh has this way of playing the game where he doesn't want to lose, not necessarily to win. When literally we've seen John Harbaugh-led teams dominate teams offensively. Honestly, I think this is a good season for the Ravens to win the Super Bowl because I think it gets harder and harder as years pass because the Bengals get back healthy next season, right? Like there's so much hell. The Browns get back healthy next season. Can the Steelers stay down but for so long? The Jets get back healthy next season, right? So like that, the powerhouse AFC, this is the perfect time for them to kind of the Chiefs look a little bit vulnerable. The Dolphins have looked vulnerable against good teams. So I think this is the season if the Ravens want to win a Super Bowl to go ahead and get that first Super Bowl with that Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh combination. But yeah, there is a little bit of fear where I'm like, will the Ravens do it though? So to answer your question, how far do I think they go? They could go with John Harbaugh. I think they could make it to the Super Bowl. I think they could win the Super Bowl. But I think there's gonna have to be almost this like superhuman way of winning, right? It's gonna have to be bigger than just John Harbaugh out coaching people. I think at this point, I think it's gonna have to be the greatness that's on the field, not necessarily the greatness in the coaching booths per se, right? That's what I would say on that one. That's how I would put that because I think honestly there's so much potential for this team. And like, it's weird because, even going back to this game against Jacksonville, one of those games where it just felt like they played down the competition. The game against the Colts, they played down the competition. The game against, was it the Browns? I think that was the other loss they had. The game against the Browns, where it just felt like they played down the competition. The Steelers, they played down the competition. But then you put them against these good teams. Watch, you put them against these gauntlet of teams coming up here in the next couple of weeks, and they're going to play out of their freaking mind like they're the top team in the AFC. But then, and that's the fear, right? That's the fear. The fear is getting the number one seed, playing down the competition like you always do, getting out coached by inferior coaches, and that becomes the issue that everybody has, and that's the issue that I have, and that's the fear that I have. Eric, appreciate you for commenting, and I'm curious to see what you think too, because for me, it's like, that's the frustrating part, right? It's John Harbaugh and his coaching ability or inabilities to coach a dominant team. I don't know what it is. Like we talked about it before. The it ain't pretty, but it's us. The kind of you gotta win ugly sometimes type situations. The Ravens could win pretty every game. The Ravens could win pretty every game. The Ravens could dominate every opponent they faced. Right. Remember in the Ravens MVP, Lamar Jackson's MVP season, the Ravens 14-2 season, there were a lot of good teams that the Ravens faced that they just blew out of the water because they could. This is a very similar team, probably even more so, it might even be a more talented team, but they, for whatever reason, they won't put teams away. And this is another one of those iterations where it felt like later on they put the Jaguars away, but if it wasn't for the Jaguars shooting themselves in the foot, what do? Now, when you get into the playoffs and you have to face some of these really good teams, some of these teams that are not going to they're not going to let themselves get beat, what do? Right? Then that's when I think the greatness of maybe Zay Flowers, the greatness of Lamar Jackson, the greatness of Roquan Smith on the other end, right? Marlon Humphrey and these guys. That's when that kind of greatness has to override any coaching mistakes. My fear, I've said it plenty of times before, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap up, but my fear for the Ravens is not the fact of the talent on the field. It's not even the fact of execution. It's coaching, right? That's my fear. How can I, as a Ravens fan, watching a John Harbaugh led team win a Super Bowl, still not trust John Harbaugh when it comes to the big moments? Because it's not that I don't trust everybody else. I trust the players more than I trust John Harbaugh right now, and that's the issue I'm having. And that's something he's going to have to prove to not only me, but I think all of Ravens flock, is that I can come out here, I can outcoach some. I am a Hall of Fame coach. He's a Hall of Fame coach, right? Obviously, but he's going to have to continue to prove that and continue to build to the resume, because I said it before the season started. When Lamar Jackson's contract was up in the air, I said this is a dynasty making decision in the making, right? This is going to define your dynasty if you want to have one. It's having Lamar Jackson on the team. They have that. Now it's time to smarten up on the coaching end and say, hey, like if you want to be the coach that everybody feels like you are outside of Ravens flock sometimes, and that you feel like you are, it's now time to take control of that narrative. And I think the biggest part of Ravens winning playoff football games is going to be John Harbaugh not getting out coached by the other coach, or it's going to have to be some sort of just all world effort by not only Lamar Jackson, but the rest of the team. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Definitely hope you guys enjoyed. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. If you are watching on YouTube or like the page, wherever you may be, on Facebook, wherever you may be, or if you're on all the major podcasting platforms that we are on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of those, heart the show, favorite the show, get us out there. But I definitely hope you guys enjoy. Appreciate Eric L for coming by, and anybody else who may have came by and you either didn't comment or didn't see your comment. I appreciate you as well. We'll see you guys on the next episode, and we'll be back very, very soon. Until